We are back with part 5 of this week's teaching. It's hard to believe we're on part 5 already. Um, we are reading through the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, and we're doing Deuteronomy, the introduction, and chapters 1 through 12, and we're already at chapter 6. Now, this is the commandment, the statute, and ordinances that Adonai your God commanded to teach you to do in the land you are crossing over to possess, so that you might fear Adonai your God to keep all his statutes and mitzvot that I am commanding you and your son and your son's son all the days of your life, and so that you may prolong your days. Hear therefore, O Israel, and take care to do this, so that it may go well with you, and you may increase mightily, as Adonai, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This is the next section in chapter 6. And we are going to talk about the Shema. This is the greatest commandment. It is also a prayer that is done in the morning and the evening. So it is very, very important. Actually, and Yeshua actually cited this as the Lord's greatest commandment when he was challenged, like I said, by the Pharisees. So you will see that again in Matthew when Yeshua says these things as well. And in Hebrew, I'm not going to sing it tonight because obviously I'm losing my voice. But as we're doing as those of you that are going to be with us joining the Messianic congregation, this is um, part of worship, the beginning part of worship. Again, like I said, it's the morning prayer and an evening prayer called the Shema. And I'm going to say the word Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Vayad. And in English, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These words which I am commanding you today are to be on your heart. You are to teach them diligently to your children and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign on your hand. They are to be as frontlets between your eyes, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So that is the Shema. So again, Yeshua continues that in the New Testament. This is the greatest commandment. The next section is called When You Prosper, Do Not Forget. Now, when Adonai your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you great and good cities that you did not build. In other words, they didn't build them themselves, but Adonai gave them into their hands, and houses full of all good things that you did not fill, and cisterns dug that you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant, and you eat and are full. Then watch yourself so that you do not forget Adonai who brought you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. You must fear Adonai, your God, and serve him, and swear by his name. You must not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples around you. For Adonai, your God, in the midst of you, is a jealous God. Otherwise, the anger of Adonai, your God, will be kindled against you, and he will wipe you from the face of the earth. You are not to test Adonai, your God, as you tested him at Massah. Massash. Diligently keep the mitzvot of Adonai your God and his testimonies and his statutes that he has commanded you. You are to do what is right and good in the sight of Adonai, so that it may go well with you, and you may go in and possess the land that Adonai swore to your fathers, to drive out all your enemies from before you, as Adonai has spoken. When your son asks is the next is the next subtitle of, and the final part of this chapter. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, "What are the testimonies and statutes and ordinances that Adonai, our God, commanded you?" then you are to tell your son, "We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Adonai brought us out from Egypt with a mighty hand. Before our eyes, Adonai showed signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt, on Pharaoh, and all his house. Then he brought us out from there so he might bring us in to give us the land that he swore to our fathers. Adonai commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Adonai our God, for our good always, to keep us alive, as is the case this day. It will be righteousness to us if we take care and do all this commandment before Adonai our God, just as he has commanded us. And that is the end of chapter 6. And there's, to recap that, the commandment is given to love the Lord thy God with all the heart, and your heart, soul, and might. And this is established to teach the children this, to keep that going. And this is known as the greatest commandment and also known as the Shema, as we talked about. And it says here, "O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." And that's the King James Version, basically. "And these words which I command you this day will be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates." It went on to say, when the Lord brought them onto the land he promised them, they were not to forget the Lord, but to continue to serve him diligently, keeping the commandments. So, again, that is chapter 6. There was a story related to the Shema, and I actually was looking for it. I heard this a long time ago. I believe it actually was from Pastor Biltz, but I had also read about it, and I just wanted to see if it was still around. And this was actually occurred after World War II. What happened, the horrible things that happened, and there were actually orphan children that were taken into, I believe, Catholic orphanages, or the story was. But anyway, I did find the little article. In 1940, I'm going to read this to you. This is really interesting. In 1945, Rabbi Eliezer Silver headed up the search for thousands of displaced Jewish children across Europe. They had been hidden from the clutches of the Nazis on farms, convents, and monasteries, and now he sought to return them to their families if at all possible. The rabbi had a promising lead with a report that a monastery in southern France had taken in Jewish children, but the priest in charge was of little help, declaring that, to his knowledge, all of their children were Christians, and Rabbi Silver could produce no records. Schwartz, Kaufman, Schneider were some of the last names. These names were obviously German, but they could either be Jewish or Gentile, which is the case with many, many, many of us that had been scattered, many of our ancestors. And I'm not sure, I am hoping that this is getting, um, because my internet had just gone down. So it's kind of blinking in and out. I'm hoping this is recording. I'm not sure because this is an online recorder, so I don't know how long it was actually down. But anyway, I just to recap, I found this article, and this Rabbi Eliezer Silver was looking for thousands of displaced Jewish children across Europe. with the Holocaust and everything. Some of them, gratefully were taken in by monasteries and things, and their lives were definitely preserved because of that. So that was a good thing. But he learned of that there was possibly a lot of Jewish children in this orphanage, and the priest that was there basically was not really of help. And some of the names, of course, that the last names that he was looking for could have either been Gentile or Jewish, um, and such is the case, like I mentioned, as many, which you know, un, which kind of got a little confusing. So what he did, and which was very amazing, these family names were obviously German, but they could either be Jewish or Gentile, as I was reading. He scanned their small faces. Many had lived there since they were toddlers, and how could he know if any of them were from Jewish families? Well, what he did in front of the children, he began singing in Hebrew, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And a handful of faces lit up, tiny voices from around the world. They recognized these ancient words from their bedtime prayers and from their earliest memories of their mothers and fathers reciting them each morning and evening during their own prayers. And these 6 words began the Shema, as I said, it's pronounced Shema, 3 sections of scripture repeated twice daily to remind each Jewish person of his commitment to God. So this is how he was able to find some of the children. They actually recognized that from, when they were really small, and they heard it, and only Jewish children would know that, because that is their prayer. So he said right out, these are Jewish children. And so he was able to actually get them relocated to some of their families and or relatives, which was a blessing. So he actually headed up. He was the rabbi that actually helped to reestablish family connections after the war. And as we know, it was such a World War II was just it was, and before, was just horrendous, and what happened in the Holocaust was just very horrendous. But anyway, that's just a little bit about the Shema, a little extra story, and it is entitled Shema: An Ancient Memory in an Orphanage. Chapter 7: No Mixing with Idolaters. When Adonai your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, and drives out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you, and Adonai your God gives them over to you, and you strike them down, and then you are to utterly destroy them. You are to make no covenant with them and show no mercy to them. You are not to intermarry with them. You are not to give your daughter to his son, or take his daughter for your son, for he will turn your son away from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of Adonai will be kindled against you, and he will swiftly destroy you. Instead, you are to deal with them like this: tear down their altars, smash their pillars, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a holy people to Adonai your God from all the peoples on the face of the earth. Adonai your God has chosen you to be his treasured people. It is not because you are more numerous than all the peoples that Adonai set his love on you and chose you, for you are the least of all peoples. Rather, because of his love for you and his keeping the oath he swore to your fathers. Adonai brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that Adonai your God, he is God, the faithful God who keeps covenant kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his mitzvot, but repays those who hate him to their face to annihilate them. He will not hesitate with them who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Therefore you are to keep the commandment, both the statutes and the ordinances that I am commanding you today, to do them. So that is the end of that section. And the next section of chapter 7 is Parashat Ikev. Adonai desires to bless. Then it will happen, as a result of your listening to these ordinances, when you keep and do them, that Adonai your God will keep with you the covenant kindness that he swore to your fathers. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb and the produce of your soil, your grain, and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your herds and the young of your flock in the land that he swore to you, your fathers, to give you. From all peoples you will be blessed. There will not be male or female barren among you or your livestock. Adonai will remove all sicknesses from you, and he will not inflict on you any of the terrible diseases of Egypt that you knew, but will inflict them on all who hate you. You will devour all the peoples Adonai your God gives over to you. Your eye is not to pity them. You are not to serve their gods, for that would be a snare to you. Suppose you say in your heart, these nations are more numerous than I. How can I drive them out? You are not to be afraid of them. You are to be sure to remember what Adonai your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt, the great trials that your eyes saw, the signs and wonders, and the mighty hand and outstretched arm by which Adonai your God brought you out. So will Adonai your God do to all the peoples you fear. Moreover, Adonai your God will send the hornet against them until the survivors and those in hiding perish before you. You should not be terrified of them, since Adonai your God is in your midst, a great and awesome God. Adonai your God will drive away those nations before you little by little. You will not be able to put an end to them all at once, or else the beasts of the field will multiply on you. But Adonai your God will give them over to you, and he will throw them into great confusion until they are destroyed. He will hand over their kings to you, and you will blot out their name from under the heavens. No man will stand up to you until you have destroyed them all. The carved images of their gods you are to burn with fire. You are not to covet the silver or gold on them, or take it for yourself, or you could be snared by it. For it is an abomination to Adonai your God. You are not to bring an abomination into your house. For you, like it, will be a banned thing. You must utterly detest and utterly abhor it, for it is set apart for destruction. That is the end of chapter 7. And a New Testament verse that is in the footnote is 1 Corinthians 1, verse 9. God is faithful, through whom you were called into the fellowship of his Son, Yeshua, the Messiah, our Lord. And just to recap, chapter 7, it stated that God will defeat the nations. Israel is to be holy, and their victory is assured this way because God will make certain that he fights their battles. So that is chapter 7. And we're going to come back with chapter 8.